Fáilte th Nash go dtí sreatha cúig de chórála Tomás I gcóir le EIRGRID, ag caint crack agus cad le íana speisialta gach seachtain. Buin súpas.
I remember saying to him, "This is some trip, Sean Murray. This is unbelievable." He says, "It's not a trip, Muggsy. It's a tour." And I was like, "No, but you know what I mean." He says, "No, I don't."
So proud there again, D&G. Who're there again, D&G. Dalshin Cabana. Yeah, to LNG anyway. Larry and Galvin anyway. That's the brand name anyway.
Tá an seo ag taithúibh an séasúr seo ag EIRGRID. Tá EIRGRID ag stúra angach leicteachas na héireann chuig todhchaí íseal chearbóin. Tá fáilte romh th Nash, Episode 7, Season 5 of Chórála Tomás in association with EIRGRID. EIRGRID are the official timing partner of the GA since 2015. Agus an nocht tá an brásásta fáilte a chur Dara Ó Cinnéide. Á sé má hánta nocht agus be mí a caint na héanrad cad agus crack agus cadaile. Dara ha fáilte rót.
Gur mágad Tomás.
Is tócha Chasing der Shachtana Dara, we'll have to start with Kerry and I suppose Galway and Armagh making the All-Ireland final. And what did you make of the two games? Are the two best teams in the final?
There's no doubt about it. And the two best teams always tend to make the final. The two teams that kind of went after it the most in the semi-finals. I was there on Sunday as well for the Donegal-Galway game, and after half-time you could see that Galway were imposing their game on Donegal. And I think when you look what managers have to say after games, they're very tuned into the rhythms of the game. These managers, I was looking at what McGuinness and Joyce said, what Jack O'Connor said, and McGeady said after the game, and it'd be very hard to disagree with either of them in their assessments of the way the game went. McGuinness had to say, I suppose, look, Galway are a bit more battle-hardened. He didn't go along with the idea, look, this is year one for me, but it is year 5 for Pádraig Joyce's project. And they've lost an All-Ireland final 2 years ago, so they're going to be extremely hungry. In the Kerry Armagh case, Jack referred to the supporters much as your famous uncle did long ago. And I suppose he'll probably get a bit of a rap for that, but it was a factor. McGeady also, and coincidentally and totally separately, referred to the Armagh support, and it was a factor. They also referred to the missed opportunities and, to critical moments of the game, how they felt were won and lost. But I think every fair-minded Kerry person will look at that and say, extra time, Armagh were the better team. And Kerry did have a bit of a mini revival, but there's no doubting that Armagh deserved to be in the final. And, I think it gives us a bit of novelty. We mightn't like it in Kerry and they mightn't like it in Donegal. I was walking out with a lot of the Donegal supporters the last day and looking at them, and they were crestfallen. And, we knew that feeling from 24 hours beforehand. It's not a nice place to be losing a semi-final, but this is a novel final. It's going to generate huge colour. The teams know each other quite well. They drew with each other in the championship previously. They famously 2 years ago drew and had penalties and a little scrap in between as well. So it's going to be a very, very good game. It's going to be very intriguing. I suppose a debate about style and everything is for another day. But there's no doubt that they're the two best teams in the country this year in 2024.
Going back to the crowds in Kerry, I was discussing it with my brother Dara, and he was saying that there's been nothing different. We've known it down the years. Like, Kerry don't travel. He made a comment. He says, I played in an under-21 final in 1993, and the only member of my family at the game was Paddy, and that was because he was my uncle. So it isn't like, I think it was a very, very small crowd, but at the same time, in no way, it's just a way, and it's not a slant at Kerry supporters. It's just they don't travel as such in big numbers.
Nothing changes in that regard.
It was noticeable, the crowd that was there. Dara, to compound things after Sunday, one of the bright prospects of the year in Killian Burke, it's been announced that he's more than likely going to have a cut off Australia, and nobody would begrudge the lad. Any cut off professional sport, the fact that we're amateur, I think we're sitting ducks, the fact that we're amateur and that there's nothing that can be done. I think it's disappointing from a Kerry point of view. We've been hit hard from it. What is your general opinion of the way that works? Because it's not only us that get hit hard. Tyrone have got hit ferociously hard as well. Are Are we victims of our own success in terms of what we are producing?
In a way, you could look at it that way. And I notice even yourself there, and most people, when they say it, they always preface their remarks by saying, look, nobody could begrudge them that. And nobody does on a human level. But on the association level, on local GA level, it's hugely disappointing. Hugely disappointing for, when you invest time and effort and energy into players, and you see them become successful, and you want them to become successful, and then they just get picked off. I think you got into a bit of hot water a number of years ago, even locally here. People weren't too happy with stuff that you would have said about Mark O'Connor, and everybody, including yourself, would have wished him well in his endeavours and in his sport. But it's hugely disappointing for the association, for the GA. It is, as I say, and I'll reiterate, on the human level, everyone's thrilled for these players. Most young athletes today, it's not like when we were 20 years of age or 21 years of age, 22 years of age. The GA doesn't seem to be the be-all and end-all for these lads, and it's kind of athletic progress. And when you look at what Zach Tuohy's achieved and what Mark O'Connor and Tyconelli before them achieved in the game, you say, good luck to them. But on an association level, on a community level, I prefer the Kieran Kilkenny model, where he went out, had a look at it and said, nah, this isn't for me. I'd like to play my years with Dublin, look at the career he had. It's ultimately it's a decision they have to make for themselves. And I remember talking to Mark O'Connor, an 18-year-old, 19-year-old Mark O'Connor at the time, and saying, good luck to you, but can say that we're all not going to be disappointed to lose you. I don't think, as you say, it's not a Kerry phenomenon. There are other counties but you look at Rob Monaghan, for example. If Killian Burke is about to go, he was one of the few green shoots that we had from this year, really. And you were in charge of the number of the under-20s this year that are being looked at and are being picked off. Minors, Ben Murphy has been mentioned. Anybody now with a bit of talent and with a bit of speed and agility that has been developed at club level, that has been developed over in Kearns through a brilliant underage programme we have here in Kerry that produced 5 All-Ireland minor winning teams in a row. Some of those players progressed to wear the green and gold. On a very selfish level, I prefer to see them wearing the green and gold. It's as simple as that. And yeah, we all preface our remarks by saying good luck to them, and that comes from the heart. But it can't hide our disappointment at the same time.
What is it, Dara? Because I never didn't get the opportunity, but even going to America playing ball, even going anywhere outside of our own area while we were able to play football, it never crossed. Did it ever cross your, to take a break from Kerry, or to take a break from the club, or to travel for a year, or to go out to America for a summer playing football? Did it ever? It never entered my head, ever.
We mustn't have had any life. All we wanted to do was play for Kerry, really. And I see it myself at local level, at club level here. And that's to be expected. Life moves on, and that kind of commitment to a kind of a tribe isn't there anymore. It's certainly not a huge motivating factor for a lot of the young athletes, and I call them athletes because that's how they view themselves, that play for Kerry or play for your club at the moment. They see it as, there's more to it. It's not that tribal thing. It's not, their canvas is a bit wider. The world has gone a bit smaller, obviously, since we were, their age, and they view it as progress, personal development, whatever you want to call it. But part of me dies inside every time I see it, happening. It's and I say that, and I don't say that lightly, because I know the amount of time and effort that underage coaches have put into these lads, and it's very hard to watch it happening, and to be totally helpless in the face of that. It's a huge push for them, and I don't want to sound like I'm blaming the young lads here. Of course, your modern day 20-year-old in 2024 is going to look at it and say, this is for me, and this is what I want, and this is a lifestyle choice. And what is it? I don't think it's money. I don't think it's financial. I think it's a lot of these lads just want to really test themselves at a professional level. And to my mind, the GA, probably will never be professional. I would hope that it wouldn't. I would hope that it retains its amateur status all along, despite all the trappings of professionalism that's around it now. And when young lads make these choices, I try to put myself into their boots and say, what are they thinking right now? And I get it. And then there's part of me that says, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And people have their lives to live. Hopefully they'll live till they're 80 years of age and they look back in a period of their lives where they played for 15 years or whatever, at the top level, be that for Kerry or for a professional outfit out in Australia. It's a choice I would have made, and that we all would have made. Maybe the menu wasn't as wide as extensive as it is now for them, and maybe we'll never understand that thought process.
You were talking about the club, agus Tá tusa sáte is na héinslí caithíarlach rón óir leis an furin sin se rón óir leis furin sóisiir. You have a game tonight, actually, I think. Tú leis an lotto. Ní stoppis riamh Dara leis an club ó chríoch níos le Kerry.
Well, bhín club an a bhadum agus dún go léir agus bhí sem ceann a gcónaí eventually nuair a chiochnóin le cuasaí cláiste go minic mirachtan sa Gaeltacht, hasig bhain be mirachtan sa Gaeltacht. Snéan taon rá i Guinness am hail, ba chumlam céan job a bheith a gom, hasig bhain bheith gobertí bheith na Gaelne agus a bheith sáte sa phobal inar tógach me agus snéan ta bhfuil an club chotáchtach dom is ní híme mar bhilgus ná mar ebre mar chósaí ebre sin mar séf sé éis chun rud éigen a dhéanamh dus na lead nóga pe chun éistín siad le núnáid and I don't think they do. But it's a privilege to be able to do something for the club that shaped me and you and so many other players that went on to play for Kerry. Brian O'Begley is our kind of man in the vanguard at the moment. We're very proud of him. We'd love to see him winning more medals. Not going to happen this year, unfortunately. But there's so much more going on behind the shop window of Brian O'Begley, and with unbelievable people. A lot of them former teammates of yours and mine, involved with under 7s, 9s, 11s, 13s, 15s, 17s, and we have two teams at senior level. We're intermediate, we're Division 1, we're in Division 6, and the work goes on. We mightn't be shooting the lights out as we once were, but that cycle turns as well. There's great work going on underage, great people involved with these clubs, with these groupings, and I'm sure you could say the same with Nemo Rangers and clubs all over the country. That's why the GA means so much to us.
I always think, even today now, before we came on, you'd have fears, and there's a big connection. People wouldn't realise, people always associate Paddy and yourself, two captains out of a small little club that have captained Kerry to All Ireland, but you've had players like Micheál Shea and John Long and Tom Long and Aidan and ourselves and yourself. We've had a right good, we've always had Kerry minors, whatever it is back there, we keep producing it, don't we? Ní facile híram, well níra facile híram.
Football, tá rugby, tá soccer and ish, and tá rugby, but we don't have a hurling club, but I'd love to have a hurling club in the Gaeltacht, but it's probably not going to happen. But it was the be all and end all, and until you reach a certain stage, for most players, it still is the be all and end all. We have good facilities. You will have a good time if you play with the Gaeltacht club. You will get well looked after. You will get well treated, and that's the same for most clubs in the locality. And you'll have a bit of crack as well, And
it's just good to see it.
But that's ultimately. I don't remember half the games that we would have played together, but what I do remember, the crack that you would have had, and the messing that went on, and the immaturity that we would have shown when we were 18 to 34 or whatever, and that shouldn't stop. I think that's hugely important, even more so in this day and age, where I see that there's so much more being put into it in terms of time and in terms of analysis, in terms of everything else is feeding into the game now. I do hope they're having a bit of crack as well, and enjoying each other's company, the same way we did. I think we were fortunate enough to catch probably the tail end of the truly amateur era, where mistakes weren't as analysed as they are today.
There'd be a lot of people who'd have fierce interest in football, and they'd always ask, and they'd be keeping an eye on how club teams in particular, are doing in Kerry, and they would have seen us go all the way to Croke Park, which was phenomenal achievement for us as a club, and then they'd see where we are now, and they'd be kind of making a comparison, and they'd understand what kind of a pick we were coming from and how small the club was, and then you're trying to explain to them, with the area that we had, they say, what sparked it off? And to me, would you agree with this? But you were part of, and we did an underage team, and myself and Aidan were together, and yourself and Dara were, I'd say, 2-3 years ahead of us. But you're team was possibly the first team, and it's hard to explain it to other people, but in County Kerry, it's the Austin Stacks, it's the Lawn Rangers, it's the big Crokes, it's the big town clubs that would have the strength at underage. And ye won everything before you, which was a first, I would presume, for the Gaeltacht, in that you were winning Division 1 titles. And I remember going to matches in Ó'Sé halfway with other clubs, and ye were the first, I'd say, team that really broke through and showed, cripes, yeah, Gaeltacht can actually compete with everybody in the county.
Yeah, like
And
I
that was down
remember
to
in
you, Dara, a
1980.
lot of it, because you were so good at the time.
I was a big farmer from the side of the mountain. I was shearing sheep at that age, so I was well able to horse around with backs as well. Like so, no, the abiding memory I would have of those years, let's say from the age of 12 to 16 when we started playing senior, I suppose, was that, you know, as you mentioned, the great clubs that we had so much respect for. I mean, I remember telling my grandfather, who's dead with 30 years now, that we beat Stacks in 1987 in the 12 game. It was the first ever Gaeltacht team that played in any level at Division 1. And we beat them off the field. I remember he said, it must have been their B team, was it? You know, and I said, no, this is the real Stacks team. This is their under 12 team, Division 1 team. This is the best team they have. And he couldn't believe it because he would have come from an era, you know, where, you know, all the great Stacks players post-Civil War were there, like, and he would have gone on the ghost train to Croke Park and he would have watched those games. He said it couldn't be Stacks because it was unthinkable for him to have a Gaeltacht team beating them. And then we were beating Kearns O'Reilly's and John Mitchell's and all the big names, Dr. Crokes, and having battles with them. And then, you know, most of the time, you know, Liam O'Rohan was the big driver behind that. You know, he just by patience and persistence, you know, moulded a decent team. And you had some great characters. Carl O'Duda, my first cousin, was a good mate of years, and you know, still involved with the club as well. Like, and likes of these lads, like, you know, they would do anything to play for the Gaeltacht, to do it, you know, and to help the Gaeltacht out in recent years. But in those years, we were coming together as a group of footballers, like, and it was a huge source of pride. It you know, whatever we've achieved in the game, we're not going to achieve much more now, like, you know, playing anyway. But that to me is the highlight of my sporting life, is beating these lads at under 12, 14, 16, you know, going into the towns and, you know, not so much sickening them or anything like that, but, you know, shocking them, saying, who are this scrub from back west? We're even speaking a different language, like. And years later, I remember William Kirby, who was good crack, and he was a great Austin Stacks player, coming out, you know, to Gallerus one day, and it was March, and there was hailstones blowing, and Kirby coming out, they were beaten by 5 or 6 points or whatever, and he came out and he said, I fucking hate playing here, you know. And I took that as a huge compliment. He didn't like Gallerus. I took it as a huge compliment that Gallerus was hell for every they came. And then there was an ice cream van parked outside the gates in Gallerus for some strange reason, selling ice creams in a hailstorm. And he says, that's fucking more of it. Is this psychology? What are you at back here? But I loved that they couldn't figure us out. You know, they couldn't understand what we were saying in the field. And, you know, all the Strand Roads, the Mitchells, the Austin Stacks, the Crokes, the Legions, they come out, they play their game, hopefully from our point of view usually get beaten, and then they go for a swim afterwards, and they come away, you know, the beach is right near our pitches, you know. And it was just a different experience playing us. It was usually a horrible experience, hopefully. But at the same time, it was different. It was unique. And it was probably the only club in Kerry where you could do that, where the crowd, like the other tribe, were speaking a different language. And that, to me, was a huge source of pride all through my life, and still is.
Yeah, it was that period when we all got to senior level, and the amount of players, it just so happened that it was clicked. It just happens every so often inside in a club where you get one group of players, and we had about 7 or 8 years, and I'd always say it, I loved playing with Kerry. We had brilliant days with Kerry. We had brilliant wins. We had terrible losses. But the crack, more so than anything else, with the Gaeltacht and with the lads that we had and the characters around the team, winning 2 county championships, winning a Munster, getting to All-Ireland final day, it was as good as anything you'd ever get.
It runs deeper. Of course, it runs deeper. I always say to the players that we have today, and it's something I do no matter what part of the country I'm in. If I'm in a clubhouse or anything, I look at the pictures on the wall always. You know, the rate of the Gaeltacht are going into Glen Rovers next Friday, for example, ahead of the All Ireland hurling final, and you look at the pictures on the wall, and obviously you'll see the big names there. But when you look at the pictures on the wall of any clubhouse, you see teammates. You see, and when I go into Gallerus, there's pictures up there of players I played with underage, and it draws a laugh out of me. It draws, you know, some of them unfortunately aren't even with us anymore. but they're our team. That's our group. That's the point I'm always trying to impress upon the younger players as well. Like, you have a certain amount of time at it. Like, you were privileged to get 15 years with Kerry, and probably 20, a couple of more years than most of us get out of playing, with a club, like, but you have a certain amount of time out of it. You'll create a certain amount of memories. You'll lose most of the games. You won't be winning every year. But what you will have is huge camaraderie, and it runs a bit deeper. I mean, playing for Kerry runs deep, of course it does, and the respect will always be there. But these are the lads you're meeting every day. You're saluting on the side of the road when you're going into work, and you're hearing about their fortunes and misfortunes as you go through life. That's what club is supposed to be about. I remember, the whole point of it is that, the whole point of the GA should be anyway that, I actually care about you. I want your life to be better because you played with us, because you were part of something, a group of players that played X amount of games together for a number of years. That should be the whole point of it, and we should never lose sight of that either. Like.
You were obviously wanted to play with Kerry always, and you would have. What memories would you have? Because the only memories I'd have of them realistically, and you're a small bit older than me, of the great Kerry team was watching them on videos. Have you any memories of them in the flesh playing back in the day when you were Garsoon?
I went to the All Ireland final in '81. We didn't go to '82. We went in '84 and '86 again. I remember seeing them coming into the schools with the cups on regular basis back then. I remember Ambrose O'Donovan having to stoop down going through the door of our school because he was so tall, like, and coming in with the cup. I remember John Egan and Tim Kennelly and Paddy, all three of them, Arthur Mercer and them all, like, they coming in with the cup over the years. Like, I remember seeing county championship games with these lads playing. I remember, our time as a kid, like, Lisbole were the big force in West Kerry football, and they were, to me, the team to emulate, and then obviously West Kerry win county championships in '84 and '85. At that stage, like, I'm 9 and 10 years of age, that was inspirational, like, and Kerry were winning parallel to all that. I remember Paddy being up in the stand and saying that Tommy Doyle will be back here next year, and West Kerry only in a county quarter final at that stage, just, it wasn't arrogance, but it was just assuredness, cockiness, like, and that was there. You could see that, and you looked for signs that there were. Kerry golden years came actually later again. Even I would have been reared on the yearbooks that Mike Mihal Line from South Kerry used to bring out, the Kerry GA annual, or and the pictures of Jimmy Dean and how fierce he looked inside, in the in a team photo, like how intense he looked, but and being saying publicly, as an 8-year-old kid, that Matt Connor was my favourite player and he was from Offaly. That kind of stuff didn't go down well in school, but I loved Matt Connor as a kid. Like, I thought he had such style, and obviously the Kerry Golden Years videos only enhanced that because you see certain amounts of the great scores that he did. Like, and obviously Mikey Sheehy was a hero. I remember Ogie Moran stopping in the street and dingled to us one day. We were waiting for a bus to go to a game. He was asking us who we were playing, and we said Desmond's. Like, and then he actually came along a week later and asked, "Did you win that game with Desmond's?" I mean, that's huge. That was huge for us. Small things like that, and it gives you a sense of what it's like to play for Kerry, and anytime you go to Tralee, which is our county town, you'd be kind of saying, "I saw the Bomber Liston walking down the street today." That's how into the game we were, like, and it was huge. And I saw Mikey Sheehy, and that's where Mikey Sheehy works, like, and those heroes were there for us. It's different now. It's totally different now. There's more access and more accessible, and that reverence for the Kerry footballers isn't there. Maybe that's not a bad thing too.
Yeah, and if we were into, it isn't as if you weren't into soccer or you didn't follow a Liverpool or a Man United, but everything was football at the time, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I'm fast forwarding a bit there. You played minor and you were part of one of the best under 21 teams that came out of Kerry and actually backboned the revival in Kerry. That 21 team, the football, I don't know, the Sigerson, you'll always be a fierce man and a fierce follower and supporter of Sigerson football. But that period in your life there, you were playing absolutely brilliant football, and that was the football he played in the under 21 team, because I would have gone to all your matches that time. It was phenomenal. That was an excellent team, and that was the team that drove the success in '97 for Kerry.
It was a huge driver. Like, coming out of minor, we didn't even win a Munster minor medal. I gave 2.5, nearly 3 years of Kerry minor, 2 years playing and 1 year trying to get on the squad and going in for trials. We didn't even win a Munster minor medal. Going into college then and seeing lads that had won minor All Ireland medals, a huge motivating factor, saying, I know for a fact that we have players down in Kerry that are just as good as these lads. And these lads have medals in their pocket. It was a huge driver for us at under 21 level. I'm not a huge believer in success at minor level. We won 5 All-Ireland minors in a row, where we'd gone 20 years without winning minor All-Irelands. And I remember thinking at the time on the 5th one, this is a disaster for Kerry football, because it spoils you in your fresher year in college. And you kind of think you have it made. I'd rather be winning the grade that he lost the final this year, and I'd rather see a Kerry lad doing well in Sigerson, because I think that's it's a better way of telling if he's, about to make it or, making it. And that sense that we had in 95, 96 when we won the under-21s with Paddy and latterly with Jack O'Connor and Seamus McGarrett and the lads there, we knew there was something happening. There was something special happening then, and again, we won whatever games we won. But the abiding memories was of the crack in the camera. I remember after winning the under-21 for the first time in 95, and he secured Paddy really as the manager of the Kerry senior team. That was his ticket to get the Kerry senior job. And I remember I had my jaw fractured in the last couple of minutes of the final, and it was out like a balloon out the side, and Paddy just grabbed me in the dressing room. Bernie Callahan, another selector, said, "Come on, we're taking this fella to hospital." We jumped into the car. He had a Nissan Premier at the time. He said, "Now, if you think we're going to hospital, you have another thing coming." Like, he just wanted to get out of there fast. So we stopped in a few bars on the way down. So we had a couple of pints, myself, Bernie and Paddy, and I was saying, he's going to bring me to hospital eventually at some stage, But after about 5 or 6 pints, anyway, a plate of sandwiches arrived out in front of me, like bacon sandwiches, homemade bacon sandwiches. I'm looking at them and I just kept drinking, like pints were going down. And he's looking at the sandwiches and looking at me, and he looked at me and said, "Will you eat the fucking things?" And I said, "Buddy, I can't. I told you, I think my jaw's broken." And here he is trying to make me eat sandwiches. It was a test, and you learn from those things. And, that was 95 and 96 we won it, and we played Cavan in the final, and, Paddy at that stage was the manager. And, the one thing about those years, Paddy never doubted himself. He never doubted. And that kind of transferred onto us. He never once threw down his era, but he never doubted himself either. And that self-assuredness came from his era without him having to mention it. And 97 happened because there was great players like Maurice Fitzgerald famously, but there was a great core group of players there, like not just the young lads, the older lads that had, I suppose, suffered for 5 or 6 years beforehand, and that had come through, like the Armagh lads at the moment. You can see similarities there where there's a core group of players that have come through all the backbiting and the backstabbing and stuck it out and are getting their reward now. And it took a great performance by Morris to get you ultimately to win it in 97, but there was so much more behind that performance, and they were great years, again, innocent years in football. If you watch some of those videos now, oh my god, we thought it was amazing football. It was awful stuff.
Yeah, I even look at it. Even when we played in, 2002 against Armagh, against Tyrone, we handed the ball to them. We gave them the ball. We were still stuck in kick it long, kick it as quick as you can into the space. You look back at the games and you say, Christ almighty. The highlight, Dara, has to be captaining Kerry to an All-Ireland.
It would be very easy to say it was, but and it, I'm not trying to, it was a very nice moment, more so for the club as much as anything else. But I thought the football we played in 2002 was the highlight. It was the enjoyable part of it on the way to the final. I remember Cork had beaten us earlier on the year, and Larry Tompkins, who was a player with huge respect for, as a kid and afterwards as an opponent, and he was managing Cork at the time, and he came into the dressing room, and in fairness, he acknowledged the level of performance that we'd put in the semi-final. It was unbelievable. It was as good a football as I've ever seen. Gooch and Mike Frank buzzing inside, and everybody moving and chewing with each other, and Larry Tompkins and Jim Forbes, Dr. Mercy, and them saying, that's, coming from Cork people, said that was a serious performance, to say that and to acknowledge it. That was very satisfying. That football was very satisfying, playing those games. And it was never about, I know it seems, probably pat to say it now, it was never about the medals. It was never about, it was at the time, but, it was about, trying a kick and it working out. I was a forward, I loved kicking. I loved trying things, and some of them didn't work out, but trying kicks and stuff like that. That's where the thrill was. It was in the simpler things. It was never about the celebrations or, that kind of stuff after winning, or, lifting the cup. Of course, was special. I don't want to not acknowledge it. It was huge, but it took so much from the club. Like the thrill there was watching people in the club looking up at you and saying, "Jesus,
Yeah.
that's our fellow up there," like, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know, and there was, you know, even in 2004, like, you know, Dara wasn't playing. It wasn't the perfect thing. It's hard to please us, of course, you know, but it wasn't the perfect year because Dara had got injured in the semi-final, like, and you know, we had a number of players. Yourself and Mark was getting his first medal. It was a huge thing, and I'll never forget coming home to the Gaeltacht with the cup and showing the teammates, the lads. You know, it's a tradition in Kerry anyway. I'm sure in most counties, you wait not the Monday but the Tuesday afterwards. You come home to the home parish of the captain, and that was a huge privilege and a huge honour, and it's a memory. You know, when you see people that don't go to games but just kind of wishing the Gaeltacht well, like, you know, that was huge to see. You know, the Gooch back in the Boher and Liam Hassel cycling a bike through the pub like at 3 o'clock in the morning and all those things, like, you know, they got it. And I think people, you know, really, you know, we really appreciated all the lads coming and, you know, behaving themselves reasonably well on the night.
Twas a part of it is like yourself and Dara. You grew up together. You went to school together. You played schools football together. You were in the same class together. You played club football all the way up from under 12s, and it was under 12s that started that time, all the way up to minor. You played every team. You basically got on together, and you went, and you'd be very tight, and you'd
Yeah.
be very close. But and I had something similar kind of with Aidan, but yourself and Dara had a fierce journey. Was it easier with your man beside you? Very often it was funnier anyway. The crack was always going to be good with him, like off the
Sure, like,
pitch. But it was a great journey.
yeah, so like the crack, as you know, the crack you'd have with Dara. Like, we don't meet up that much anymore, like, because Dara's life is in Tralee and mine is back here, like, and, you know, life, I'm sure it's the same with yourself and Aidan as well, like, you know. But that bond will always be there, and the crack will always be there. I mean, after our first All Ireland, we lived a year together in Limerick as well, like, after winning our first All Ireland, which is a recipe for disaster, like, because you were on the scene as well. You were a young kid at the time, and, you know, Morgan O'Shea, who was out in Australia at the moment, who was part of the '97 panel, was there as well, and a neighbour of ours, Vincent Callahan, from my own next door neighbour here down the road, and then Cathal O'Dood as well, who I mentioned earlier. Like, it was mayhem, like, for because we didn't know how you handled your first All Ireland medal or whatever. Like, I suppose the signs were on. We get relegated from the National League the same year, shortly afterwards anyway. But, you know, it was always crack with Dara. I think Dara kind of, you know, always searched out kind of ways to find crack and went about looking at ways of finding crack. And he wouldn't suffer fools gladly, and he certainly wouldn't suffer bores gladly, you know. And he wanted humour, and he wanted, even after losing All Ireland's, like, Dara's kind of medicine was always to seek somebody who would make you laugh, and it was usually him making the others laugh, like. And that's just, he had that charisma, and he still has that charisma, you know, where the storytelling, the yarn is everything, like, and the hot ball is everything, and that's why people gravitate towards his company. It reminds you an awful lot. I've seen you all, and Dara and Paddy, you know, were very similar for personalities, you know.
I was thinking as well. I was thinking an awful lot about that time. Um, you were in UL for 3 or 4 years. You went to Mary I for another 3 years. You never thought a day in your life. You went into journalism. You have read in the Galtate, as you said yourself. You wanted to be at home amongst your own people. And Fitzmaurice lived with us for a year, and Fitzmaurice went down
Fitzmaurice was there, yeah.
he went down the road of teaching as well. And to be fair to the both of you could have gone down the road of redecorating as well, in terms of as a business, because in Joseph Street, the crack and I don't know what it is there. Like, I'd be talking to fellas, and I don't know the current team. I don't know any of them. I don't know them on a personal level, but all inter-county players, I'd always say, geez, I hope they're having the crack that we had. Do you reckon that kind of balance is gone? Because we had unbelievable. You mentioned Kirby, Barry, Shea. Everybody we had was a character. And then there was a fierce balance. And I'm glad, and I heard somebody say it last day from a hurling background, an inter-county player. He said, I'm glad I played in the time I played, because the game has gone to a level, and the balance maybe. I'm not saying they don't enjoy it. I'm not saying it at all. But I'm glad I played in the time we played, because you had the Eamon Breens, you had the Liam Flahertys, the
Yeah.
William Kennedys, phenomenal footballers, phenomenal trainers, tough men. But by God, did they enjoy the crack.
But the missing link is social media has destroyed everything. It's it has eyes and ears everywhere now, and it has changed everything. And it seems kind of patronising for us to be talking about modern day players and saying I hope they're enjoying themselves, because I'm sure they are to in a different way. As you say, I think we don't know the pressures that they're under in terms of the social media, and can only assume that it's not a very pleasant experience on a night out. Even God knows if social media was around in our time, it
It's
would
got away
be
with it.
yeah. Well, you got the tail end of a different an era of kind of innocence, really, in the GA, and more than anything else, where nothing was scrutinised, thankfully, and we were lucky in that regard. I mean, you mentioned I went down the road of journalism there. Like, I mean, there was 2 or 3 incidences where your Uncle Paddy would have questioned my journalistic skills over the years, like, because famously in South Africa, and we all know the story about what happened in South Africa and Paddy's interview before he left for South Africa. He told me out on that trip that he was worried and concerned about an interview he had done at home. I said, sure, we were out in Cape Town. I said, so there's an internet cafe is gone as well. There's an internet cafe down the road. I'll just go down and print that out and I'll read it and I'll go through it. I came back here. I had read it before I came back up to the hotel. I said, Paddy, I see, there's nothing in that interview, boy. I don't know what you're worried about. And obviously the whole thing exploded as it did, like, and all that. And about a half a year later, he says, you're some fucking journalist that didn't pick up on that. I said, look, to be honest, to this day, I don't think there was anything in it, like, but at the time I probably should have seen it coming. And years later, he was reminding me of it even. I suppose, yeah, we kind of, my career is in Radio Nagalta now, and is in kind of, community journalism and national journalism. But I mean, when this country was in huge trouble a number of years ago, and Brian Cowan was the Taoiseach of the country, and Brian was a great mate of Paddy's and great crack as well. But Paddy wanted to bring him into the radio as well at one stage. They were around together, touring around, see would I do an interview with him about his Offaly under-21 career. This is at a time of the economic crash now. And I said, look, whatever journalistic principles I didn't have in Cape Town, I might have them here now. Like, I'm sorry, no, Taoiseach, and we won't be doing that interview. He understood straight away, but he was looking at Paddy, he said, and you expect him to talk about Offaly under-21s, and but that, Paddy was always kind of challenging you like that and picking at you like that and hopping balls. Paddy used to wreck my head about the football boots I used to wear and everything like that, in that setup. Like, but yeah, we didn't take ourselves that seriously, and I'd like to think that's still the case with some of the Kerry footballers, that behind that there's a lot of personality there. You don't get to see it as much because everything's so streamlined and so refined now and so filtered, like. So you'd hope the lads are, I feel for the lads, actually, the Kerry lads this week now, like, they're going to have to go and lift take the brickbats and take the horrible stuff that comes with losing All Ireland semi-final down in Kerry, and take the stuff and move on. And I suppose that's the beauty of club championship and stuff like that. It comes around right and quick, and the healing starts straight away. But there has to be hurt, and there has to be hurt there. And geez, I'd say those Kerry lads are hurting now, no more than Donegal lads up in Donegal at the moment, after all the effort that they put in. Like, and you would feel for them in that regard. Like, that's something that we didn't. That level of scrutiny wasn't there when we were there.
No, it's a slow burner, because you don't get a right crack at it until the middle of the summer next year, and that's the only time you'll get to actually rectify whatever is after going wrong. Do you find, and I notice it myself, right, Joyce, I'm talking about modern football, and it's completely different. You mentioned it, that it's completely different to what we played in. Like, what McGuinness is after doing above in Donegal. You look at a Donegal team 12 months ago, and same players, maybe a Ryan McHugh back or whatever it is, and 1 or 2 players differently. But a manager and a setup and what you can do. And I saw Joyce talk in the last few days. You compare, it took Joyce a while. Joyce thought he was going to come in and play a certain brand of football, and that would be it, and he'd stick to his principles, and that's not the way it is, and it's taken him a long time to mould it. You have McGuinness, who comes into Donegal, and within a year, with the buy-in, and they're still playing defensive football last year, but there's an absolute huge buy-in. The point I'm making there is, you can have coaches, or one coach or a manager, and the way that can kick a team into line and put a system in place and make a team that wasn't or shouldn't be compete. Like, there's no way anybody would have said, that Donegal in the start of January would be pissed off coming out of Croke Park that they didn't get into an All-Ireland final. It's a hard one. Like
It is, but I suppose the McGuinness template was there in a way. It's a different version. Obviously, and the game has moved on since he kind of first impacted on the inter-county game. But the structure and the structure and the rigor that he would apply to a training ground is there, and he has that kind of back catalogue then to say to his players, listen, this is what we achieved before when people went on this journey with me, and there was probably a latent talent there in 2011, that was still there in late 23, early 24 when he was imposing his will on them, and then it's down to a manager's charisma and his ability to convince them, that this is where we want to go. I'm going to ask stuff of you that you've never been asked before, and if you question me, I'm sure there's somebody else who will do it. It's unfair to compare it to a cult, but all intercounty bubbles are kind of cults in a way, because you're
do you
buying
think
into a way
players
of life.
do you think players question it a lot more or don't buy into it a lot easier than they used to?
Oh, I think players question it an awful lot more than they used to. I think they want the data, they want the rationale behind what you're saying to them. I'm sure they can spot a bluffer a mile off right now, and they want to know, these little deficiencies that we apparently had in last season. How are you going to improve them this season, or how are we going to go about rectifying them? It's going to take a bit more than just a shot in the dark and a bit of luck. They want that structure, they want that data, they want that information, they want to know what are you going to do to make me a better player, and what are you going to do to make us a better player. And that's rightly so, because they're the ones putting the time in, and McGuinness seems to have a lot of that. Joyce, as you said, it took him a while to cop on, I suppose, in the early years. By his own admission, said he was a bit naive in his approach, expecting to be able to play the game. I'm involved in coaching and training at club level, and you're playing a particular opposition, you're playing, even putting a team out. A lot of what you're doing isn't ideally the way you'd like to, the way the game would be played. I mean, it's not the way I would like the game to be played, but you have to be realistic enough and to know that this is giving you the best chance of winning the way the game is being played. I mean, the Gaeltacht this year got relegated from Division 1. We conceded more scores than any team in Division 1 in Kerry, and that's an eye-opener for us, because obviously so we were doing something wrong.
Do you think that right now that's relevant in the fact that Jack Connor is probably getting a lot of heat and for the style of football, but a lot of people don't understand why that style of football is necessary to a point. Like, it doesn't matter if Kerry are beaten by 15 points or by 1 point, Dara, because they'll get the same slating for what they did, and they weren't far away, even though players weren't going at 100% or whatever it is. The form wasn't right, but they were still not far off. But people don't understand that side of football is needed.
I'm very uncomfortable sometimes with the analysis that's done after Kerry lose a game, because even in Peter Keane's regime in 2021, you lose to Tyrone, and okay, we're all wise in hindsight, say, oh, this is why they lost, and the next manager up now, and we're supposed to, give them a kicking. They were damn close. They were, there were certain things that just obviously weren't good enough. They were caught short on a given day, and different managements think that they can bring different things to the table. But we have to accept right now that the management that have been training with this lot for the last 3 years know the players better than anybody, and are in a good position to correct. I think we make a mistake in Kerry a lot of the time, that we just throw out the institutional knowledge that's been built up with this group of players, all of a sudden, and that we don't take the lessons on board. I mean, talk to people outside Kerry then, and they'll tell you, and talking to people even in the media area on Sunday, Donegal people, Galway people, they're all looking at Kerry and saying, look, the provincial structure is doing you no favours. Kerry are a very good National League team. That's hierarchical. You find your place. Kerry tend to win a lot of games in the National League, but you can't continue the National League then into the spring, because you have the Munster Championship. And other people might say, look, they have an easy run to the All-Ireland. Kerry don't want that anymore. Haven't wanted it for 20 years, and are suffering because of it. And we have to take that when we do lose games. In we have to accept that. That's the structure that's there at the moment. And this year's championship did not test Kerry the way you would have liked, and we can't have it both ways. We can't have managers like Kieran McGeaney and like Patrick Joyce in the All-Ireland final saying we're in the All-Ireland final because we were tested and we were road tested and we have challenged every step of the way and we hit walls and we have lessons and experiences built up We don't have that in Kerry. We don't have that in the early stages of the year. And I know there's an awful dynamic between Kerry and Cork. We had it 30 years ago because Cork were beating us, and we learned from that. And then for another 10 years, Cork and Kerry are very close. That dynamic isn't there anymore. And it's certainly like, you mentioned 20 years ago, the toughest team we had to play was twice. We had to play Limerick, an unbelievable Limerick team. And people would find that hard to believe right now, given Limerick's current football status. But they were an unbelievable football team. And they were our biggest challenge in those years. And, we don't have that anymore. And we can't invent it. We can't reinvent the Munster Championship. And it's not helping Kerry. And it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. But if you're looking for reasons and sifting through the entrails and the debris after last Saturday, that's one of the reasons. And people have to accept that outside and within the county as well. I don't like the narrative that builds up around losing Kerry teams every year. I think it's unhelpful. And I think, I'd be fundamentalist like that. I wish Kieran Donaghy well in the All-Ireland final. He's a great guy. I'd love to see him back coaching in Kerry in some capacity. I didn't like Mick O'Dwyer going outside the county. I don't like any Kerry lads going outside the county. I'd like that institutional knowledge to be building up all the time inside the county. And, that's an unrealistic expectation to have, but that's just my view.
Before I say good luck, Dara, and without going into the rules, and I don't want to discuss the actual rules of trial and why it could work and why it wouldn't work or why it couldn't work, do you think there is a need to bring in rules?
There's always a need. I think, one of the big things in the GA, they say we changed, especially in football and Gaelic football, that we change the game too often. But the old adage of if it ain't broken, don't fix it, it is kind of broken. And you have to gauge that by, viewership, by supporter engagement. It's not right that you're hearing conversations inside a full Croke Park or a half full Croke Park. That's disengaged people. Like football and hurling are nothing without the people that watch it. There's something back there in the back of our minds. Yes, we all play football initially. We don't have any big crowds at under 12 games, but you're always trying to play to a particular gallery, say this is what Kerry team is about. Without supporters, you have nothing in the GA. And at the moment, supporters are frustrated with the way the game has been played. So, of course, there's a need for review. And there's some great people involved in that review. I think it's, it's people that get the game, that understand the game, and that bend the game to their will. And I'd like to see a lot of what they've suggested coming to fruition. And they have, in fairness, consulted widely as well. So, I wish them well in their work. And, it is a great game once it's played properly. And you will get a great All-Ireland final, for example, but there's a few games too many that aren't engaging supporters anymore. And that's to be pitied because it's not really happening in the National League. So some of it is rules-based, some of it is structures-based, and it's a huge, huge debate, but there are good people right at the heart of that debate at the moment, and I trust them to do a good job.
I hope so. Dara, I know you're a busy man. I'd like to thank you for being with us tonight. It was a good chat and a lot of stuff we possibly couldn't discuss because of our former teammates with the Celtic and our former teammates with Kerry. But we'll discuss it another time. And 'tis the one thing that when we do hook up and meet up with fellas again, 'tisn't about old games you'll be chatting about. 'Tis about old stories going down Times Square. I'd like to thank EIRGRID, EIRGRID are the official timing partner of the GA, and without them, none of this would be possible. We're back next week for our last episode of Season 5 as we bring you our All-Ireland football final special ahead of Armagh versus Galway. You can listen back on all this season's episodes across YouTube and all podcast platforms. Mile Mahagav, agus gur Mahagatara. Mile Boyachas EIRGRID, or a horror show. Is EIRGRID co-40 ifigul on common Lucas Gael, Camaraderie.